Now live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another fantastic Uplink convention, Long Island Retro / Uplink, whatever panel we have here. And this one is going to be super cool. I'm honored that they asked me to do this. I am Brian McGinnis, one of the hosts of the hilarious Playable Characters podcast, where we interview video game characters on my show. I have other comedians and actors and improvisers come on the show and pretend they're a character and we chat. Very stupid and fun. But today we're gonna have so much fun and a serious chat, a inspiring chat. This is TrueBlindGaming. We're gonna talk a true inspiration. We have with us today Terry Garrett, no ordinary gamer. Obviously, people who are in here, I assume, maybe have seen your page already or your YouTube channel. He's inspired countless players and non-players with his journey into completing video games. Real testament to the human spirit. The big difference between Terry and other gamers, Terry cannot see the games he's playing. He's blind, as he's pointing right there, which makes it even crazier that he can do these things. So welcome, Terry Garrett from TrueBlindGaming, everybody. How are you, man?
I am doing great. Thank you for having me on, Brian.
This is going to be awesome. So far, we have a big woo in the chat, and we have a really interested in hearing this awesome story.
Nice.
Yeah, and so am I. And again, I've watched some of the videos. When they first approached me about hosting this panel, I was like, wait, what? He does what? Like, that's impossible. And then I watched the videos, and it's like, that is so crazy.
Oh, I guess it is possible.
It is possible, yeah. So Celia in the chat says, I remember reading an article about you years ago. You are so cool. So look at that, man. Wait, she's probably talking about me. Celia, are you talking about me or Terry? I'm guessing me. No, it's probably Terry. Of course, Terry's very cool. But let's talk about your superhero origin story here. What's your, let's start here. What was your earliest recollection of gaming? Let's kind of start there, and then we'll progress into what you're doing now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I always grew up with video games. I grew up in the early 90s, so we had an NES, we had a Sega Genesis, and I actually lost my sight due to like age 10. So I actually had vision before, and I've seen like the old Super Mario game 1, 2, and 3, Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Those were the main ones I remember, and I still, even with memories of having seen before and know all my colors and everything, I can picture those games very, very vividly.
Okay.
So I went to the deaf and blind school in Colorado Springs, like middle school through graduation, and they had a Super Nintendo. I got myself a 64, a GameCube. My brother had a PlayStation. So gaming's always been a part of my life. Yeah. But there are certain games like I've seen before, and then after age 10, there are games that I've never seen before and just play solely through sound.
Is the difference, because you can tell a Genesis game from a mile away as far as the sound. You can tell a Nintendo game from a mile away because of the sound. When the sound started getting better and better and more specific, was that something that kind of just blew your mind? Like, okay, you know exactly what this is. Were you impressed with the evolution of like versus like the MIDI 8-bit sound, the retro bit sound versus where we are now?
Oh yeah, definitely because of the Zelda series, which I'm passionate about. Sure. Like the original Nintendo NES Zelda versus like Skyward Sword or Breath of the Wild and Twilight Princess today. It's just a huge advancement in not only sound, but soundtrack, story, and they're just non-comparable, but they're also just great achievements in their lifespan of that time. And I've seen the original Zelda. I tried to play it, but I was like 6 or 7, so I'll admit I was too dumb to pass it. I could never pass that game, but I've never seen Ocarina of Time, for instance.
Right.
And like the first 3D one. So, but like going back to NES and Genesis and even Super Nintendo, I actually have a passion of listening to video game soundtracks, and you can just hear a soundtrack and you're like, oh, I can tell that's like an 8-bit, 16-bit, 64-bit. You can kind of tell as the evolution got better, the sound design got better, music got better and everything.
Now, when you play, and we'll get into this more in a few minutes, but when you play Ocarina of Time, because you haven't seen it, are you picturing Legend of Zelda from NES like in your mind? Because you not knowing what it actually looks like, that's crazy. That's blowing my mind a little bit. Like, what are you picturing? Like what you're doing, what Ganon looks like now, and what Link looks like now?
So interesting. Also, when playing the original Zelda, is I also had limited vision. Like I had to be close to the TV to be able to see it. So Link to me just looked like a square with the sword that would just poke out of one side of it when you did your sword and everything. So I know that's not how Ocarina of Time looks like, because one 3D game that I saw briefly, because I lost my sight in 98, Mario 64 came out in 96. So I saw Mario 64 very, very briefly. So I know kind of what the 3D polygon looked like at that time. But I never saw Link, but enough descriptions of him around, like the kid in the green clothes with the tunic and the hat, and then the adult Link with basically grown-up version, but then the tights, the undershirt, the boots. And I can get a picture of what that looks like in my head, but I bet if I were to see a picture at some point, I'll be like, I got that right and that wrong. And
that's incredible. How'd you lose your sight at 10? What can you get into that?
Yeah, so I was born with cataracts in both eyes. Me and my twin brother both were. And that's where the eyes problem stopped for him, but they kept continuing for me. So through the first 10 years of my life, I had 22 eye surgeries that they were required for me to be able to keep my sight. I had glaucoma, inflammation, my corneas clouded over, so they needed to be replaced. My retina's detached. And we still don't know to this day what happened. I think I just got a bad pair of eyes. There's no history of blindness in my family. So, But I lost all the sight in my left eye when I was 5 and all the sight in my right eye when I was 10 due to scar tissue. And they tried to take that scar tissue out, but it just kept coming back like 3 days later. And so to this day, my eyes are still filled with scar tissue. I still have my original eyeballs, but they just don't work anymore. I think the connection between my brain and my eyes is still there. Because like if I focus on my actual visual field, which I don't do a lot, I can see like black and gray and white swirls that are constantly changing. But it's too filled with scar tissue for light to hit my retina, thereby causing sight to happen. So that's
wild, man. It's 22 surgeries.
Yeah,
for a couple of years of life. It's on your eyeballs, no less.
Yeah. I only had 23 surgeries. The 23rd was my wisdom teeth, but that's it. So, and then I remember at the doctor's appointment where they said, okay, we tried to remove the scar tissue from your last eye. It didn't work. So I don't think there's anything else we can do. And I just remember having this reaction like, yes, no more surgeries.
At that point, you're like, I'll just deal with it, whatever, you know?
Yeah, because it was like average on 2 a year. So.
Oh my God. Yeah. Celia wants to know, what is your favorite soundtrack? What are some of your favorite soundtracks?
One I was just listening to the other day, Smash Brothers Melee. Awesome soundtrack. Just the remixes of all so many famous Nintendo songs out there. Twilight Princess is probably my favorite Zelda soundtrack. I absolutely love it. It's just so dynamic it's just really advanced in the soundtrack there.
Why did you choose to do Zelda games like instead of something quote unquote simple? Like I guess Mario 1
simple
could be a simple game to beat with memorization, or even Mike Tyson's Punch. I've seen people do that because there's memorization. Why choose something so in depth and intense as Ocarina of Time? Was that the first game you beat with your impairment, or was there something before that?
Nope, that wasn't the first game. Okay. Let me answer this question, then we can go into the origin of that.
Yeah.
So the reason I picked Zelda is because I played the original, and even though I wasn't that good at it, I could only get like 6 out of the pieces of Triforce. And then I figured out later, it's like, wait, all I had to go was drain the pond. Anyway, so after having that, but I loved that game. And then at the deaf and blind school, there was someone who had a 64 with Ocarina of Time, and I would listen to a friend play it. And I'm like, oh, it's a 3D Zelda. And they would read me the text and everything. I'm like, oh, this sounds so cool. Only if I could play that game. And then come later, I'm like, oh, there are emulators where you can play it on your computer, and there are these things called save states. And I'm like, save states, which everybody, we have a poll going to see are save states cheating or not cheating. So I'm interested to see what people think about that. But I was like, oh, now my screen reading software is trying to tell me there's a poll now. Sorry, but
I just clicked it and it's there.
That's what my computer yells at me every time something changes. So, But Ocarina of Time, with those save states, I'm like, oh, if I just mess up, I can come try it again and again and again and again and again. So that just opened the door to me, and I just loved Zelda, and I just started tinkering around with it. It was literally my first experience was I got out of Link's house, and I literally just like pushing the joystick around Kankiri Forest and just listening. And I had no idea what I was doing. I was jumping, I was climbing up the walls, I was jumping over stuff. I was like, I couldn't make any sense of it, but just slowly over time, figuring out one detail at a time. I was like, okay, if I go to this area, if I know the water sound is over here, and there's a wall to my left because I can tell when his footsteps change if he's running into a wall. Yeah. I just piece that together, and then just over the course of time, just learned how to play it.
That's some crazy memorization right there. So, like, was there somebody telling you also? Like, was it your brother or someone like, hey, this is what you have to do next, or go this way, go left, go right, or anything? Or is it all you just trial and error?
So Ocarina of Time, of course, I listened to a friend play it. But then I started looking up walkthroughs. Like if I couldn't play a game, I would just read a walkthrough just for the experience of knowing what goes on in the game. But I'm like, I can use this as knowledge. I'm like, okay, I have to find the tunnel above the area, crawl through, and then I have to find a chest that has a Kakiri sword. Okay, now I know my goal. How can I use the sound to be able to get there and finish it? And just steps by that. But so when I do Ocarina of Time, and like I'm playing through Majora's Mask right now, which is the second game, I have to do a bunch of research before doing an area. And then if I really get stuck, because of the YouTube community I have, I usually reach out and I get a overwhelming response with people trying to help me and everything. So it's just a great community to be able to play these games.
That's awesome. By the way, quick update on the poll. Like immediately we had 9 people say, no way, it's not cheating. So that's good.
Yay.
Jeremy in the chat says never save states or never cheating. Celia says she doesn't think so. William, he says, I think it depends, but it's definitely not cheating in this case. I can see that.
Yeah, that's what I would agree with. It's not cheating now.
Yeah.
So.
Save states are lifesavers, says Cindy in some cases. Whatever helps.
No kidding. Absolutely true.
Yeah, exactly.
I died.
Scarlett says it. This is true. As a grown-ass adult, I never play something like Super Metroid without them, and that's where I am too right now. I think they're definitely like.
I haven't tried. I've read walkthroughs of Metroid. Haven't tried it yet. Ooh, there's a challenge.
Excellent game. Yeah. Celia said, I wish they existed on my original console. Would have had a better time with Battletoads. Celia, I'm one of the few people who beat Battletoads without Game Genie back in the day. It was Thanksgiving night. My family's yelling at me because dinner was ready, and I was like, hold on. I beat Battletoads in front of my cousins. It was the best day of my life. Still to this day.
Yeah, and then no one else in the family cared.
No one cared. My cousin, we couldn't. Like I played it for months and months and months, and I finally beat it. Yeah, some people saying it's just impossible to play without the save states. It's crazy. It is. I think a lot of people are agreeing now. I totally understand people just like, you got to play it the way it was meant to be played. Back then, we had to. We've made improvements.
Yeah, I had to play the original Zelda with no save states.
Yeah.
And if I totally could, I would. Like, there are some times I do areas I'm like, okay, let me see if I can get through this without save stating. Like I had a 3DS with a remake of Ocarina of Time on it, and I got through the Deku Tree with no save states.
Look at that. There you go.
Oh my gosh, it took me over 4 hours, but I got it.
Scarlett says she beat Battletoads as well, immortalized in Nintendo Power. Do you have a picture of that, Scarlett? I would love to see that. If you have proof that I definitely believe you, but I want to see your name. That's pretty awesome that you did that.
That's definitely a game I haven't. I didn't play Battletoads, so I didn't even know about it. But
Battletoads is considered one of the hardest games. However, people have it wrong because the third level is this speed tunnel thing. It's like these speed bikes, and it's awesome. First of all,
nice.
The soundtracks. That game has an incredible soundtrack. Battletoads.
So yeah, there's someone who put together on YouTube like a classic arrangement of different soundtracks from NES, and Battletoads is on there. I'm like, oh, that sounds neat.
Even the pause music in Battletoads, boom, 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 it's the best. So, but the third level is brutally hard unless you understand it, and it's actually pretty simple the more times you play it. The later levels are just borderline psychotic. They're so hard, but it's a great game. It's a great, insane game because they tried so many different genres in one game, kind of, and they made it so hard. But it was a very big wannabe TMNT type thing, but it worked. It was
that's how about this? Like you mentioned Game Genie. The first game I remember using cheats on to beat was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game.
Yeah.
I would turn on the infinite lives cheat and I would beat the game.
And you'd have more fun, because if you get to level 7 or 8 and you die with all your continues gone, you're like, ah!
Yep.
An hour and a half, 2 hours right there. We can't do that now as adults, you know what I mean? So we need the save states. We need the save states or unlimited lives. Not a big deal.
I mean, my kill counter would probably rival someone who's playing Dark Souls, but
yeah, exactly.
I got through the game, so.
Cindy in the chat says she remembers when they had the Sonic Mega Collection on PS2 and they had save states were built in. She was so excited.
Wait, what?
She had the when Sonic Mega Collection on PS2 came out, it had save states.
Save states built in?
Yeah, so
ooh,
it was awesome. I remember when games started doing that. It's great. They were built.
So
do it already, yeah.
That's actually an excellent transition into how I actually got started in all of this. So the game is Oddworld Inhabitants. They make the Oddworld games.
Yeah.
And first one was Abe's Odyssey, and then the second one they produced after that was called Abe's Exodus, which had built-in save states. And it was a 2D platformer. So I was like, okay, so I don't have to worry about a 3D direction. I just have to worry about 2D. And I have save states I can use. And there was enough sound in the game from Abe's footsteps. The main character is Abe, for those who don't know.
Yep.
And all the enemies made noise. Even the security orbs that would shock you if you tried to use your powers in a certain area, they even made noise. So it was just a great sound design game. And one funny thing is my brother had a PS1, and Abe's Exodus could be played on that. But the video output for his PS1 went out, and he was just going to get rid of it. I'm like, no, come on, I can still play it. So I hooked it up to the TV, and I beat Abe's Exodus, but no one else could see the TV do it. So I was like, heh, suckers.
Wait.
But I was able to pass the game.
That's crazy. So you beat this game, but the TV wasn't technically working. But you could hear the game.
No, the sound was. That's it, yeah.
Right. The game was playing, the sound was playing, but you couldn't see it, and you beat this game. That is hysterical.
Yeah, so, and then my parents, like, they could tell when I was dying, like a lot, because it's Abe's Exodus. But I was so blown away by the sound design. What I did is I just threw out an email to Oddworld Inhabitants. Like, they had one of those support@oddworld.com kind of emails. And I just threw a email out there and said, hey, thank you for making such a wonderful game. I'm totally blind, was able to make it through and everything. And they responded, and they're like, we want to tell your story.
Yeah.
So that's how it got started. And they basically made a video and an interview and put it up on their YouTube channel. It had over 100,000 views in less than a day. And I'm like, I can make my own channel. So that's when I started doing, brought up my own YouTube channel in May 2011, put up a few Oddworld game videos. Did Bit Trip Runner, which I was playing at that time. It's a sound-based rhythm game.
Yeah.
Well, it has visuals too.
Right.
But then Ocarina of Time, I started doing that game because I'd beaten the game once before in college, just playing through the game. But I'm like, you know what? Since I've beaten this already, why don't I record it and put it out there for everybody to watch and inspire them? So
we have a bunch of people in the chat saying how awesome that is. I think that the Oddworld story, it's amazing doing that.
And they're coming out with Soulstorm. I am so excited about that.
So, how many times does it take you? You're playing Oddworld or Ocarina of Time, the Water Temple, whatever it is. How many times does it take you to actually beat these levels? Is it just hundreds and hundreds of times? Are there some that you just do quickly, or are they all different? Like, give me a quick rundown of that.
So I'll spend several hours on one temple, and the way I usually do it for my videos when I was doing Ocarina of Time, since I beat the game before, I'd do an entire temple and then edit the 2 to 3 hour long video into something that was viewable for my audience. Yeah. Now that I'm doing Majora's Mask, which I've never played through before I started playing through it, which is an adventure in itself, I'll do sections of a temple and I'm like, okay, I got the map and compass. Now let me go back and practice that and then record that, put it out, and then practice the next part of the temple. Like for instance, I just finished the Snowhead Temple, which has the boss Got or Goat, depending on what part of the country you're from. That battle I had to practice 3 times.
Wow.
And it still took me 25 minutes to beat him. I have the video out there on my channel, and that battle was just so amazing to me. It's like that I accomplished that, and I was nerve-wracked and so excited after I finished it. And now I'm just moving on to the next parts. So
what is that feeling like when you get that when you hear that final either slash of the sword or the final music that the enemy's dead? What is that feeling like for you when you finally know you, after so many times trying, that you finally accomplished it?
So when I'm practicing it just by myself, and I'm like, I did it. It's kind of like, it's like a feeling of denial at first. And I'm like, yeah. I actually did that. And then when I actually do it on camera, which is a completely different feeling, because you're like, okay, I did it with save states and like hunched over my computer and just like, I'm just doing this thing. But then when you will try to make a video and a good product out of it to inspire people, I'm like, look, I did that. Now we can move on to the next thing. I was not stopped by this part of the game. And that's just great to me that I'm able to overcome this challenge. What's next?
That's incredible, man. What a big thing for you is obviously the sound design and things like that. How important do you think, especially now, games have these freaking 40-piece orchestras and these huge budgets for gaming? Like, can you appreciate still the 8-bit stuff and the current, like a Last of Us, for example? You know what I mean? Like, do you feel like they're both equally as incredible? Do you appreciate the 8-bit sounds as much as the new ensemble cast type things, or do you look at them differently?
So 8-bit gaming has its place with the graphics, the sound design, and everything. Now, they were very limited in their sound design. Like going back and trying to play the original Zelda now would basically be like a blindfold run where people memorize movements and everything to pass games, because you can't hear his footsteps, you can't hear the enemies. The sound is just very limited. Now, as we progress through like Ocarina of Time, where you can hear footsteps, enemies, sound design, into these later systems, the sound just gets so much better, but not only the sound effects themselves, but directional sound. Like, there's a type of sound design that's used in a lot of games that are specifically designed for the blind called binomial sound, which, from what I understand, is recording sounds with, imagine like a mock-up of a head with microphones where your ears would be, and then recording the sound design around that environment, so when it's put into the game, it really is a merciful sound. Like, you can tell things if they're behind you, in front of you, how far away, how close.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how much that is used in mainstream games, but one thing that is happening with a lot of sound design, especially in a lot of these hack and slash and everything, is there's too much sound. Because if you get too much sound, too much explosions, and if they don't pay attention enough to just making noise and not actually making the sound, if it's a far away, close, left or right or anything, then it just becomes like a mosh posh of just emptiness that doesn't mean anything to me. So
that makes sense.
And
Yeah, I gotcha. I have a PS5 and they have that 3D sound, that 3D immersive sound. And when you put the headphones on, there are some games that are just like, holy cow, I feel like there's somebody behind me right now. So
cool. Yeah, when I get a PS5, I really want to try The Last of Us 2, which has built-in accessibility features that I've been really wanting to try. And of course, Soulstorm is coming out too. So
yeah. I just read the other day that it's like there was a blind person that platinumed Last of Us 2 because of all the accessibility options.
Yes, there's over like 60 accessibility options. It's incredible. And Gears of War 5 actually has some accessibility for their Horde mode. So the accessibility is starting to make its way into the mainstream games now.
Now, Last of Us 2 is such a visually striking game, and so is God of War, things like that. Like, knowing that you're going to play that and not get to experience what it looks like or what the enemies or the creepy zombie-like infecteds look like, does that take away from the experience for you at all? Or does someone explain it to you, like what they look like or anything? Because there's this one monster in this game, it's called the Rat King, and he's insane looking. It's this big, gross infected monster, and it's such a cool visual. Does that take it away from you at all, or do you still enjoy it just as much?
I think when I'm in the middle of the game and I'm playing it, I'm more focused on the challenge of like, how can I get past this, and the sound and the movement, and do I have to be tactical about this, or logical, or fast, and that's what more interests me. But cool. I will say, when I'm playing through Majora's Mask, I have a particular follower who on every video finds something to describe to me. And when they described GOT to me, and they were basically using the concept art, not the version that's limited by the Nintendo 64 hardware, but the concept art. I'm just like, oh, that is so amazing, because now I'll go back and fight him again, and I will, because of how Majora Mask works. I can mentally picture in my head what this monster looks like.
Yeah, that's incredible.
So I would say I don't miss it, but when I have those opportunities, it does put another block into the puzzle that makes it just that much more enjoyable.
Of course, yeah. Celia wants to know, have you tried any of the Ocarina of Time mods? There's a bunch.
Actually, yeah, I have.
Yeah? Which ones?
Yeah, the only one I've tried is the randomizer, which is always fun. So randomizer, so that's a very generic term. The one I was playing basically took every single chest in the entire game and randomized all the items.
Oh, jeez.
So you could walk into Mito's house at the beginning and get the Megaton hammer. But let's say you go get the sword and the sword's not there. Yeah. Okay, how do you get into the Deku tree? But the game has stuff set, so like the forest is open. So I was going into the spirit temple even before I went to the Deku tree, because the randomizer just randomizes all the items when giving you access to areas you didn't have before. Yeah. And you just got to basically, okay, I have these items now. How can I get through the rest of the game?
Delia in the chat has done that. She has very painful sometimes, the randomizer.
Yeah, because you don't realize how many chests in Ocarina of Time just have rupees in them.
Yeah.
Because you might go open 20 chests and get nothing but rupees. And you're like, ah.
When did you realize, like, you know what, I could use sound to still beat these games? Like, when was that, or even just to still play games in general? Because a lot of people would have just been like, I'm done, I can't play games anymore. When did that become a thing where you were like, I can still do this by using sound?
I think it was kind of immediate, because I had limited sight, and it wasn't like I woke up one day and I was instantly blind. I lost it over time, so I think I was kind of building that skill in the background. Mm-hmm. Because one game that I continued to play on the NES, even after I lost my sight, was the old Excite Bike, which is interesting because it's a racing game, but there's no turns. So, and all the jumps make noise, so you can kind of react to that. Yeah. I still remember my brother. I beat him at a time trial on Excite Bike, and he came out. It's like, no way, he's blind. He can't beat me at this. So
you were blind at the time. He wasn't. You beat him at Excite Bike.
Yeah, mainly because I'd played it a lot more than him. So,
I think you're just really friggin' good at games. I think that's what's going on.
In my own way, yeah. But like at the deaf and blind school, we had a couple kids that someone would play through like Donkey Kong Country on the Super NES. Yeah. And someone would pass the game, but then we would go around and try different levels and just see how far we could get. And yeah, most of the time we wouldn't make it, but I'm like, hey, we're just having fun to see how far we can make it on this level.
Now, are there the deaf and blind school? Are there deaf kids playing with blind kids and vice versa together, telling each other what to do, what they see, what they hear, or things like that? Is that what's going on? So
no, the deaf and blind school, the deaf and the blind are actually pretty separated, given it's not really a language barrier, but communication barrier. Now, I was on the wrestling team going through high school. And
you wrestled too? What can't this kid do?
I can't see.
Hey! Well, you clearly proven it's overrated seeing, I guess. You know?
Yeah, I'm good at it. So there were deaf students, and we found ways to communicate that way. But when we lived in the dorms and everything, we were mostly separated. Yeah, okay. So
I gotcha.
But we have sighted supervisors and people who were not fully blind but visually impaired, and then they would kind of help us out. So
there you go. All right. You mentioned Donkey Kong Country, which is a great game. Is there a game either current or a retro game that's on your list of games to beat in the future?
Ooh, Super Mario World would be one. I'd like to 100% that game. That one's going to be hard though because the sound design is getting better, but it's not 100% there.
Yeah.
Save State City
For a Super Nintendo, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, hold on. So
yeah,
just beating it isn't enough. You want 100% that game.
Yeah. I'm having that problem with Majora's Mask right now. I'm like, I 100% this game. So
you don't. It's not just to beat it. Like you're really trying to prove like you could do the entire game that was meant to from start to finish, explore every corner of this game and still do it with no sight. That's where you're going. That's incredible. Yeah. Scarlett says she loves how optimistic and excited you are. You got an amazing attitude. Yeah, you really do. It's incredible.
Yeah, I just hope I'm not talking too loudly and blowing people's ears out.
No. It's perfect. It's perfect. What do you look for in like you mentioned before, some games have too much sound. Mario World, you said it wasn't like great. Like, what are you kind of looking for to know? Are there games you just can't play for whatever reason? Or is there something specific you're looking for in the sound design or gameplay that lets you know you can do this?
So not only sound design, but a lot of people will know this, but camera control.
Yeah.
And the two great examples from the 64 era is Mario 64, which had a terrible camera, and Zelda Ocarina of Time, which had a wonderful camera with able to do Z targeting, and also if you weren't targeting, it'd zero your camera, so it would basically focus the camera behind the character.
Right.
So that also is another reason I gravitated towards those games. Mm-hmm. Now, I definitely like the adventure type exploration that Zelda brings. Mario, I know, is more of a platformer, but that kind of interests me too. First-person shooters, I'm not against playing those, but they're not absolutely my favorite. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say it, Dark Souls. I wish I could play Dark Souls.
I still haven't touched that one.
Everybody who on my YouTube channel when I used to do videos like a lot in the past, because there was a time I took like a 3-year Oasis and now I'm back. But everybody's like, you gotta play Dark Souls. And then I didn't know about this game and then I looked it up and they're like, oh. Yeah, well, I'll die just as much as everybody else does.
Yeah,
so.
Seriously. Okay.
But, sorry to go back, and this is gonna open up a wonderful topic. I've thought of a retro game I would love to beat.
Let's do it.
Portal. I absolutely love Portal.
Yeah, Portal 2 I think is one of the best games ever made.
Just a few weeks ago I watched a walkthrough of Portal 1 and then Portal 2, and I'm like, oh, they took a formula that was amazing and just made it so much better. But those two games, I'd love to go back and beat those.
Yeah. When you watch walkthroughs, what are you looking for? Like, are you just listening to them talk about it, or are you just trying to get an idea of them explaining what the game is and what they're going through?
So I tried to look for two different types of walkthroughs. One's with commentary, that isn't stupid, and then one's without commentary, and it's just the sound. So for instance, Ocarina of Time, do a couple plugs here. Zelda Dungeon, which if anybody's looked up walkthroughs for Zelda, Zelda Dungeon does fantastic work, and the person who does the voiceover for Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask is absolutely fantastic in telling you what you need to do. But then another channel, Zor Zelda, it does their thing is to make walkthroughs that are basically no damage, not speedrun, but quick walkthroughs. And their idea is like they want to create a product that people can watch like a movie, like a video game's like a movie. Yeah. But so no commentary, but the sound and the graphics is what they're going for a lot of. But the sound is absolutely amazing. So okay, I listened to one with the commentary. I know what to do in this area. Now I'm going to go listen to this one, and now I know what sounds to listen for, and then I'll go, if I have any gaps or anything, I'll go try to find text ones and read up on, because everybody might throw a different nugget in there. It's like, there's a crate, there's a box, there's a fence, it's just the way people read it. I'm like, they didn't know that, but that little hint right there is all I needed.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then I go and practice, and it takes me quite a while, like hours, to get through a certain section.
I bet. I mean, yeah, you're piecing two things together, the commentary and the non-commentary, and kind of going off of that. It's incredible. Yeah. Delia said, check out Mischief Makers on N64. It's one of the few 2D platformers on the N64. No
Oh, Mischief Makers. Okay, that'll be easier to remember.
There you go.
Okay.
And Amanda said, you'll do fine with Dark Souls. And Celia said, oh my God, Portal is retro now? Shoot, we're getting old. We are.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think the hardest game you ever completed was? Is it Ocarina of Time, or is there something else that I'm gonna hate you more now for? That you just beat a super hard game?
Hardest game I ever completed. I would say Majora's Mask is harder than Ocarina of Time.
Yeah. I think people say that, yeah.
Like with Portal, Majora's Mask, I think, was the formula that they wanted to go with Ocarina of Time, and just took it to the max and did such an incredible job. But I'm making it so much harder doing 100% because Majora's Mask is a very side quest driven game. The main storyline, if you just do everything main storyline, it's actually quite short.
Oh yeah.
So Majora's Mask is probably my biggest challenge right now. Before that, it was Oddworld Abe's Exodus.
Right.
For sure.
You don't want to try just an easy game like Dig Dug or something like that on the Atari? Nothing simple. Frogger, maybe? I don't know.
Lemmings?
Lemmings, there you go.
That game would make you mad too, though.
I've blown up Lemmings on purpose just because I was getting so mad at the game. You can make him self-destruct. I just do it all the time.
No, the game was out when I still had sight, and I'm like, what does that thing do? And I led a lemming into it. I'm like, yeah, oh, that's what it does. I should stay away from that thing.
Yep. Awesome. I mean, I think your whole thing, obviously you're beating these games, but it's such a life lesson, I think. Like, is there something that you've, like, did you know you were setting out to be this inspiration to people, or were you just like, I still just want to play games? You know, because people really do look at you like, this is incredible what you're doing. Like, is there a life lesson you want to convey to people or anything, or even people who have impairments or disabilities, to say to them?
Yeah, the former for sure. Yeah. A lot of people's like, oh, Terry's such a hardcore gamer, and I'm like, I don't look myself as a gamer. Like I'm not playing like a ton of games. I pick one or two, and then I kind of stay with those projects for a while. I stay up to games a little bit, mostly ones I'm interested in. But I created my channel not to show like I can play games, but it's to inspire people. Because I feel after losing my sight, and I do this not only in gaming, but my other hobby is fitness. I do that in the workout room. I do that in my daily life. I'm a software engineer, so at work, I try to carry myself to inspire people out there that even though you might have difficulties, and I will admit there are difficulties that are greater than mine. Blindness, in my opinion, is not hard to deal with. There are many, much harder things out there, emotionally, socially, physically, stuff like that. And I just want to be an inspiration. I want people to look at my games and go, that instead of, well, he's such a hardcore gamer, versus that dude just inspired me to try to do something in my life.
Yeah. And
that is the one solo reason why I make the videos. It's not to prove that I'm good at games or better than the next person, but it's to inspire people to just shoot for goals, figure out there's no challenge. Like what we say in TrueBlindGaming is there's no limit but yourself. So to take that to heart and just go forward in any challenge in your life. So,
is there a certain video game character that you've like resonated with, or have you thought like have you drawn inspiration from a character ever? Like obviously some of these characters are so well thought out, and is there a character where you're like, you know what, I like this. This is what I relate to.
You know what? Little segue, because it's just literally what popped into my head, but it's not a video game, but a show. Yeah. Avatar: The Last Airbender. Everybody knows. Yeah. I know what you're doing this weekend.
Sorry. It's always been on my list of something to check out. I never have yet. Yeah.
Well, I only watched it like less than 6 months ago. The series, not the movie. But okay. Toph is an earthbender, and her attitude towards life is just fantastic. I feel what they did with that character, especially in that time where they were trying to take someone who, like a disabled character who was blind, and give them such a driven attitude and just so much zeal for life. I feel like I kind of connected with that character. So, but as for video games, I can't say that I've actually really felt that deeply connected to the characters. I mean, but I think that's more because I'm more focused on the challenge of actually doing it. So
Sure. Yeah.
but tough for sure.
A lot of people in the chat went nuts because they knew it was going to be tough.
Yeah. See, you need to watch this show.
That's great, man. So, did it take you 5 years to finally beat Ocarina of Time?
Yeah, 5 years.
5 years.
Because
was there ever like I'm gonna give up type of thing, or was it always fun, or like because that's wild to me that it took 5 years. Not that it took 5, but that you would still attempt to do it and keep going at it with the great attitude. Like, was there a time you wanted to just give up, or were you always, no matter what, gonna beat that?
I mean, everybody has burnout on certain projects and everything, and I had burnout. Like, I got to the Spirit Temple, and then I had to stop because I was graduating college and moving to a new place and everything that. So, but then there was the reason it took 5 years is because I took a couple years Oasis where I was kind of gone. And then, but I still had the computer with the save state. So I just fired it up one day and I'm like, I'm going to finish this. And I started in like May 2011, I think. And I just remember January 2nd, 2016 is when I put out the last video of me beating Ganon. And it's funny, like, I ended the video, I give Ganon the final swing, and I'm like, and I've just beaten Ocarina of Time.
Yep.
And the video ends. That's it. Everyone's like, you could have sounded more excited about it. I'm like, I just wanted to finish that project. I did not know what kind of attention it was going to get. It was just like, hey, I beat the game. Cool. And, of course, that wasn't my first time beating it either. But
I gotcha.
But then I beat Got in the Majora's Mask, and I'm like, oh, my God, I just... because I've never done it before. So I would say the problem with the YouTube channel is like there is burnout. I would come, go away. So,
makes sense.
But I've been really enjoying doing it again now because I feel like I'm in a place in my life where things are kind of steady with my life and job and house and everything. So I feel I just want to put more content out there and like to continue to inspire others. So
incredible. We just got like 5 minutes left. We got a question from Chris here, Chris Small in the chat. They're interested in hearing more about the accessibility options in modern games and which ones you find especially useful.
Because I've been in Majora's Mask and I don't have a lot of these mainstream consoles yet, but I haven't delved too deep into a lot of the games, but I've read about them, like Last of Us 2, God of War 5. Now the PS4 and the PS5 and actually Xbox has built-in screening software in its menu, so you can use the social media and the media players and stuff in those. And that accessibility is, but Nintendo hasn't really done anything. They have Zoom, so you can zoom in and make it bigger, but they're kind of behind on accessibility right now. But as I get these new consoles and can try out these new games, I definitely want to make content where I kind of describe like what I am looking for and which ones are good and which ones are kind of nice try, but it doesn't work. So
yeah, I think that'd actually be awesome. And people also in the chat, are there any games you want to see Terry go for here, whether it's retro or modern? What games do you want to see him play next? Put those answers in the chat. We'd love to see some good suggestions. And you got
do we have any more questions from the chat? We can kind of finish it up with that.
People just so excited about people just love you. That's all.
Nice.
I love you, man. You're incredible. Yeah. Is there one lesson, not just beating the game, but just going through these journeys? Is there one lesson that it taught you that maybe you didn't know going into it?
There's not only one way to do things, especially in Zelda. Like there was that one opportunity in Ocarina of Time where in the Forest Temple you were spinning around on these platforms and you had to shoot an arrow through a torch to melt a switch. I'm like, well, that sounds hard and complicated. Why don't I just go over where the switch is and use Den's fire and try to melt it? And I'm like, oh, it actually worked. So the fact that there's more than one way to do things, like like in Majora's Mask right now, I'm trying to get to the infamous them, the aliens, and before you battle them, you have to practice shooting balloons on your horse. And all the walkthroughs will tell you you have to get 10 out of 10. It doesn't within the 2-minute limit. I just sat there and let the time run out, and I figured out, oh, if you just sit there, she'll teach you the song anyway. You don't have to complete it. I'm like, oh, well, that's nice. I skip a whole part of the game I didn't think I was going to be able to do without major help. So there's more than one way to do things in games.
Yeah.
Speedrunners know that. So.
yeah, right. Celia said, check out Shovel Knight, and I will. Shovel Knight, one of the best soundtracks you will ever hear. And
Shovel Knight. What's the system?
It's on everything, I think.
Okay.
It's on Switch, PS4, Xbox. It's incredible. Like,
yeah, Mischief Maker, Shovel Knight. Okay.
Soundtrack to Shovel Knight is absolutely incredible. It's such a great retro inspired game. And 2 more quick questions here before we got to wrap it up. This has been so amazing, though. Can you talk about a transition between cartridge to CD-based medium and whether or not that was impactful to you from an audio quality standpoint? That's a good question. Because things got much better once they were finally on a CD.
Yeah, I would definitely think so, because N64 to GameCube. Now, GameCubes were compact discs, but like the sound design between Nintendo 64, Smash Brothers versus Melee, oh, it was fantastic. They added steps, they added stereo sound. It was just incredible, and the soundtracks were just so much better.
Yeah. And have you ever tried any Jrpgs, DL wants to know?
I am actually... See, I'm not a gamer. I'm not familiar with what a Jrpg is. I know what an RPG is.
I think that's like the Japanese role playing. They're more like, man, I can't even give an example. I'm so terrible at those.
Oh, Genshin well, yeah, Genshin's an RPG, isn't it?
Yeah, probably.
I mean, I would have to probably turn it to English, which I know a lot of people wouldn't like, but.
Come on, everybody, let him do it.
I was like, oh, the English dub is so horrible, and I'm like, but sorry, subtitles don't really cut it.
Yeah,
but
like
I wouldn't be
like Final Fantasy, like yeah. Like,
oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think Final Fantasy would be great, and actually, the battle in the older ones would actually be a little more user friendly since it's turn based. Yep. So, and my brother played Final Fantasy, so I know of it. I just haven't looked too deeply into it, but. Yeah, that type of game I would gravitate towards.
Awesome. Very cool. Last words of wisdom. What do you want to leave people with here, Terry? And by the way, people, if you haven't checked out his channel yet, TrueBlindGaming on YouTube, please check it out. Yeah,
TrueBlindGaming. You can also search Mega T Garrett, because that was my old name, and YouTube's algorithm is still kind of switching over from one to the other. But I just want everybody to remember, the only limit is yourself. Just remember that. And just go out there. Make 2021 the best year you've ever had.
Incredible, man. This has been so great. I mean, just from hearing about the story, just from 2-3 weeks ago, and now talking to you, this has been so great. Laura in the chat just said, never been so inspired to actually do something with my life. Thank you for this, Terry.
Go.
I agree, man.
Do it.
I agree.
Fitness, relationships, job, gaming, whatever. Go and do it.
I love it, man. Dude, thanks so much for your time. This has been really incredible. And everybody in the chat, thank you so much for getting involved and loving this story.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, man. Been outstanding.